All right, we're talking about jazz in this month's music article, and maybe you like to turn on some smooth jazz every now and then.
Oh, yeah.
David Morton, I remember riding with my dad when I was back in the States, and he would turn on that smooth jazz station and
My dad too.
relax on the way home from work.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
anyway, we are talking about that in this month's music article, as I said, and I want to ask you, David, how does music in general inspire you?
Music really inspires me quite a bit. I listened to a lot of music when I was growing up. It was a big part of my life. My mom always had the oldies station on. She was a huge fan of the Beatles, so there's always a kind of a special place in my heart that I go to when I hear the Beatles. But yeah, music really, classical music or rock and roll, which is my personal favorite. A lot of times there are certain times in my life that I can remember like as being connected to a particular album of music. You know what I mean? Like, oh, that was a really hard time in my life. I remember I listened to this album a lot, and there'll be certain songs on that album that I connect with experiences.
Yeah.
You know, so it really does have a big part in my life and the way that I see the world.
Right. Sometimes a song comes on, you haven't heard it for maybe many years, and it triggers something in your mind back to a memory, a certain stage of life, and so forth. And that can be either good or maybe bad, but usually good.
Usually good.
Right? So, what about jazz, though? Do you like jazz? Are you a fan?
Yeah, I love jazz. Yeah, I grew up listening to a lot of jazz. Also, my dad was also really into smooth jazz, but he got into a lot of classic stuff. Also, you know, older stuff. He was really into Miles Davis. He was a very famous musician, a very famous jazz musician. And then I later got really into John Coltrane, who does this famous album called Love Supreme. And his music really inspired me to think in new ways, and really kind of pushed me to see how far creativity can take you, and even to see the kind of spiritual realizations that you can have sometimes through explorations in music.
Well, speaking of inspiration, I want to ask you about the history of jazz musicians or musicians in general. We've been doing some articles recently on musicians and kind of profiles on them, looking back at their lives and the work that they've done. What do we gain from doing that sort of thing?
You learn a lot about people, about even sometimes about specific cultures through the music, and particularly when it comes to, like, for example, rock and roll in the 1960s. A lot of those songs were written about actual events that were happening around that time.
Yeah.
You know, so like there's a song called Ohio by a band called Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. That song is about an actual protest that happened at a college in Ohio, right? And some things that happened there, and it was a tragedy because some people got really hurt. But that song was singing about that event, right? So you can get so much from history. History can be really enriched by knowing about the music during that time.
So those songs are sort of marking history, at least some of them, and so that's fascinating in and of itself. Something else that is fascinating in and of itself is Advanced Weekly Update,
That's
right, David Morton?
Yeah, absolutely. It's when these two YouTube influencers hop on a video and tell you all about what's going to be coming up in the next week of advanced articles, and we even ask a weekly question.
That's right. So be sure to go to our advanced YouTube page to check out the video each and every week. We'll see you next time here on Insights.
See you later.